One.
We're
Okay,
live.
we're live. Well, hey, Leanne. This is our third attempt, hopefully the last, to get this live to work for us. I'm so sorry. My Wi Fi is just not on my side today. But anyway, I'm Maria. I'm the marketing manager. Welcome, everyone who is watching. I'm the marketing manager here at Lilu, and we build tech enabled products to make moms' lives easier where tradition meets the modern world. And joining us today is Leandela Reyes. She is a wonderful mom of two and also the founder of Milksta. So, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and Milksta?
Yes, thank you so much, Maria, for having me today. First of all, I super love the tradition meets the modern world because I myself, like, I'm a fan of that. Like, I would say I'm a fan of that. So, of course, to introduce myself, so I'm Lian, like Alice said, Maria mentioned that I'm a mother of two, and I both, of course, breastfed both my kids. And I do have like an extremely, positive and negative two different breastfeeding experiences that I would say that of course is it's very affected by different factors, but um and partly I would say with that is being away from where I originally come from. So I'm originally from the Philippines and now I'm living here in Canada.
Okay, so this week is Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Breastfeeding Awareness Week, which is also why we wanted to have you on here and sort of tell us your experiences, both from your point of view as a mom, but also a founder and an entrepreneur within the breastfeeding space, because we all know that breastfeeding is super important. Um, but we also know in our own experience with Lilu that tradition is super important for breastfeeding and sort of the traditions that support the breastfeeding parent, really. So you're originally from the Philippines. You now live in Canada by way of Brazil, and you had your first baby in the Philippines and your second baby in Brazil. So tell us a little bit about what your first experience having a child and breastfeeding in the Philippines was like for you.
So with my first child, it was such a breeze. If there's a better term for breeze, I think that's how I would describe it. It's like everything just went well. I think one of the biggest factor I think I mentioned a little while ago is like, having your support system around you, having like someone like my mother, who's like the grandmother of my child, nurturing the mother, basically nurturing the nurturer. So that's one thing that I've of course like made such a big difference. And of course, like when in the Philippines, I had the opportunity, like after giving birth, the baby, they just gave the baby to me right away, like put it in your breast. It's like, it's very similar to like, I don't know, I know it may be a weird, like a different kind of like comparison, but just like when like other mammals give birth, they give they put the baby right away beside the mother and let the baby like find the boob. That's how it felt like when gave birth in the Philippines. So breastfeeding, I was able to breastfeed my son like exclusively right from the time that he was born until, of course, I had to wean. The only reason I had to stop breastfeeding back then is I had a very I got hospitalized and I was like confined for quite some time. And I also had, during that time, I was working 12 hours a day, so I had a hard time also adjusting to that. And of course, in addition to that, aside from the very easy breastfeeding experience, my postpartum recovery goes well. It went really well as well. So I gave birth to cesarean section, and after a month, I was back to work, working 12 hours a day. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, so I don't know. So actually, that's the reason why when I thought about having a second child, I was so excited. It's like, oh my god, I think I would have like the similar breastfeeding experience. I was so excited. I having another baby. I think it would be the same. It would be, I would breastfeed him as long as I can. I even had like a goal that I think I think because once you have your first breastfeeding experience, you feel like you're more experienced. So by the time that you have your second child, I was like, I will nail this. It will just go like a breeze as well. So if you could just imagine, it's like I would rate my breastfeeding experience with my first son like 95 out of 100.
Okay, so what about your second child? And your second child was now born in Brazil, right? So you're in a completely different context and different breastfeeding traditions, also different hospitals, a lot of differences, I guess, at face value. But what about how you felt and how, it was for you emotionally and your experience as a whole breastfeeding your second baby?
So, okay, so I think I have to rewind a bit. So prior to giving birth in Brazil, at 20 weeks of gestation, like pregnancy with my second child, I started bleeding. I had like severe placenta previa. That's how they call it. And I had to like quit my job, stay at home. So you can just imagine a workaholic woman stuck at home, like you cannot go out, cannot do anything. So it really, took a toll on my personal, like emotional, physical, like stress on a mom who's like carrying and trying to raise a baby inside her belly. So that's how it felt like. And apart from that, I had gestational diabetes.
Oh
So
my.
like everything that you could imagine that could happen for a pregnancy. So it happened with my second pregnancy. So when I gave birth, of course, I was already expecting that it's going to be cesarean section, but I never really thought that the breastfeeding experience will be much affected by everything that came before that. So first, I gave birth in a country where nobody speaks my language. So in Brazil, and especially where I gave birth, like the hometown of my husband, they don't really speak English. They speak Portuguese. So everyone in the hospital, everyone, even my husband's family, they don't really speak English. So it's only really my husband that I am able to talk to. So that's the first one. The second one, I would say it's like I gave birth cesarean section. So this is, I think, it would be, I just learned about it recently when I started like becoming an advocate of breastfeeding and just started reading about it. When I was um, in labor with my second child, of course, it's like scheduled cesarean section. They started putting liquids like IV to me, which is, of course, a routine. It's what's normally been done in the hospital when you're having a cesarean section. They would just inject like fluids in your body, which is, of course, I could feel that because I was starting to like, you
Well,
started to go, yes, well, and of course, cesarean section. And after that, I mentioned a while ago that I just recently found out that it actually can affect your breastfeeding journey because the swelling, like we all know that engorgement, it's very common when especially if after you've given birth, like the first 5 days, I would say it was really, really painful. Like I cannot explain how difficult it was. Like my boob was like, it's almost exploding, but
oh,
no milk is coming out. The pain. And I realized that and learned after that it's actually because of the routine IV that's been given to most women who are giving birth by cesarean section. So anyway, apart from that, um, there wasn't really a lactation consultant, of course, during that time that was there beside me when I was giving birth. And after the baby gave birth, I they just took the baby away, like put it in a separate room like it's normally is. So I'm just very lucky that I was the doctor my OB is my husband's like aunt. So I told him like, can you bring the baby here? I want the baby to be with me, like because I really wanted to breastfeed because during the time I already know that the golden hour, it's super important. As soon as the baby gets out, within that, they call it the golden hour, the 1 hour right after the baby's born, just put it to the boob. Let the baby, actually it's not really put it to the boob, like put it on top of on the belly and let the baby crawl. They call it the breast crawl. So that was I was expecting, but of course that didn't happen. So I just requested to room in the baby right away as soon as we can. And I put my baby. It's so exploding, like the pain. And I don't know. It's like it was for 24 hours. I was trying that, like just putting the baby nonstop, like how it should be. And the until the doctor came and said like your baby is not getting anything, so they had to give him formula. And during that time I didn't even have like bottles because I was expect I didn't have anything like bottles, no formula, nothing, because I was really expecting that it will just be a breeze. So same with the second one. So we had to buy like bottles there, like get formula, feed the baby. um to be honest, like during that time I felt like, like I know many moms could relate that you would feel like a failure, but at the same time I have this in my heart and my mind that this is just a phase. It's just a phase. I could get through this. I'm determined to breastfeed and I will do everything to achieve that. So of course I requested lactation consultant. I had, because it's super painful, I also had, can you imagine like the stress also of my husband? Like I'm asking so many things from him. I need a pedia dentist to look at the baby's mouth because it's so painful. Like they, like all
We're
the
checking
symptoms.
for zip ties and tongue
Yes.
ties. Okay.
And he has, of course,
Oh,
it's like, yes,
poor little
zip
guy.
and tongue tie. So can you just imagine like all the torture that I've experienced during that, first 5 days, the milk did not come in, and I really wanted to breastfeed. So I asked my OB, like, I really wanted to breastfeed. I want the milk to come out. She prescribed me with domperidone, which is, of course, it's very common. It's very commonly prescribed, especially here in Canada, for mothers to, um, to help the milk come out. It's they call it like pharmaceutical galactagogue, basically. So I had that for around 5 days. The milk, and as usual, put the baby, pump, everything. Like I did everything, and I think it was until fifth day. I cannot really remember, but I started like having palpitations, and it's actually a side effect of the medication. So I told the doctor I need to stop this. So I just go back to just doing the pumping and everything. And this is the funny thing. Like when I told my husband, like, you need to find moringa. So that's the moringa story. So for anyone who doesn't know, so moringa is actually is a vegetable. That's how we call it in the Philippines. It's a vegetable, but in the US they call it a superfood, which I actually just recently found out that it's considered a superfood in the US and of course Canada. But in the Philippines we normally have it in the backyard. It's super duper cheap. It's like our spinach, because spinach is very expensive in our country. So moringa is something that what just like how we use like spinach here. And actually, if you go to the Philippines and if you mention moringa, or we call it malunggay in our language, it's all the connotation is like, what, someone gave birth. It's always like this. It's like, why are you pregnant? Are you lactating? It's always, there's always a connotation that moringa goes hand in hand with lactation. It's because during my time, like of course with my first son, which happened like many years back, by 36 weeks my mom would just start cooking everything with moringa, because he told me she told me that it will help with lactation. It will help with like nourishment, because like a superfood, it would help with like basically just giving all the nutrients that a mother's body requires. And just another fact, my mother is a dietitian, so of course I would always listen to what she says when it comes to like nourishing the body. So anyway, like fast forward to giving birth, I told my husband, you need to find moringa. Like um I do think that it's something that will help me. Of course, he wasn't able to find in Brazil. And funny story, when I asked why, it's like, why are you able to, are you not able to find it here? Because it's like it grows in tropical country. I even googled, and then I found out that it was actually banned in Brazil for a reason. And the reason is because there are some people who are pushing it as a treatment to cancer.
Oh.
Yes, so it's basically but like, of course I started digging also about that. Actually, there are many other countries that uses, they drink moringa power shots for, cancer treatment. But I don't want to go into that, because for us, like in the Philippines, moringa is breastfeeding, moringa is lactation. And that's what I wanted, but we couldn't find. So I asked my husband, I think it was 1.5 month when my son was 1.5 months. And of course, we're still supplementing. I'm still doing my best, trying everything. We've seen three lactation consultants. And I was just deciding to have the babies, lip and tongue tie like clip. I told my husband I want to go back to the Philippines. That's where I would do whatever needs to be done. I was so determined, to just continue with the breastfeeding, the exclusive breastfeeding that I was aiming for. And as soon as I landed back home, my mother, as usual, the typical mother who just saw her, her daughter after a long quite some time, prepared a feast of moringa, everything. Even there's even moringa ice cream. Sometimes moringa, we call it moringa pandesal. It's like moringa bread. We put it in bread, moringa spread, moringa soup, everything. So she just put it there. And this is a very interesting also tradition that we have in the Philippines, which I'm very sure I haven't seen here in North America. So in the Philippines, when you give birth or after you normally for those who deliver in normal, they would just have lactation massage right away. But for someone on a cesarean section, of course, they need to like wait for a bit, like a week or two, until the mother is able, the mother's body is able to like have it. But we do have like lactation. We call it lactation masseuse. They and we call them lactation ladies also, like in the Philippines, because normally they're ladies, they're old. Can you imagine, like, tradition? It's a very traditional um, process or method in the Philippines. So we book them, they go to the house, and most of the time they're also we call it lactation counselors. We During my time, like, I haven't really met an IBCLC in the Philippines, if I have to be honest. So they would just help in, with the positioning, helping with the baby, then do the massage. So the process is like, we would have a bed. It's like a, a foam about this thick on the floor, and you will just like remove everything. Basically, you'll just be in your underwear, and they would put like a blanket on top, and they would just starting massaging like the breast, the sides, the lymph nodes. It feels more like a lymphatic drainage massage. And it was like, for someone who've just given birth, who've been to too much torture. When my mom like got the lactation, lady came to her, I was like, oh my god, I can't wait to do this. It's like, do it now, like right now. And in that 1 hour, in the beginning, of course, it's more of like trying to relax you, which of which we all know that, the oxytocin, like, we need to be relaxed for the letdown, relaxation process. That's the first thing. And then after, I would say, I think around 10 to 15 minutes, when it's you would feel like the lactation massage is really working, you would really see fountain, like literal fountain of milk, to the point that when I got up of the bed, the foam is soaking wet with milk.
Oh, wow.
So that's how I it's very difficult to explain. That's how good it was. It just releases all the clogged ducts, which I'm very sure I've had in the very torturous, like, first 1.5 month of me trying to breastfeed, doing pumping, hand expression, and everything. It's just like a release. And of course, like, after that, the milk would just like, you know flow. I if I were, of course, I'm not so sure if the lactation ladies in the Philippines, I don't want to say that there's scientific backing with whatever they're doing, like, but in our experience, it's a way of like releasing the milk, making the milk flow out. Like you would see like holes. You would realize that, oh my God, the nipple actually has so many holes. It's like,
It does. It does.
it's
And it's
like,
quite surprising.
yes, it's like, it's shocking and surprising. Like when you're trying to pump, you would sometimes you'll only see, some holes. But after lactation lady does the 1 hour of like lactation massage, you would just see it like a fountain. So of course, on top of that, like doing everything the usual, which to everyone that as a breastfeeding specialist, I always say that if you're a mom and you're struggling with, milk supply, just keep on like putting the baby on your boob, just keep on pumping. It's really a supply and demand thing. I would say, to be honest, even if like I'm the founder of Milksa, like the Moringa, which is something that we would call like a miracle, a miracle milk booster, if I were to say it. But even if I eat lots of, Moringa, drink lots of, beverages with Moringa, if I'm not going to empty my breast, if I'm not going to feed the baby or pump my milk out, there's no point in, doing all of this. So when it comes to breastfeeding, it's definitely a holistic process, just like with diet. It's just not about like taking a magic pill and poof, like you will have all the milk that you want. But just, I think that's how it's really an epitome of like, merging the tradition and of course like how it's, the modern world. Like right now everything, of course, I'm very sure like the pump that we have right now, like, the what do we call this, the um wireless like pumps, the wearable pumps. It's just like I almost wish that, oh my God, I wish I had that before. Like I wish I trained with my son. I wish I if it was easy, I bet it would be easier during that time. But it's really a matter of like combining, you know the tradition that we had in the Philippines, and of course like with with the modern, the modern expertise, the modern, the technology that's available right now in the Western world. I would say like if you merge that, it's the perfect, I would say the most ideal and perfect gift a breastfeeding mother could ever have. I would have to say that because I've experienced both, and of course both of them would always have like its own like pros and cons. But if you merge that, it's just amazing. And another thing that I would say when it comes to like the easier experience when I was in Asia is like I mentioned a little bit a while ago, if there's someone who's taking care of the mother. Because when I came to, of course, to Canada, I don't have like a grandmother here with me to like, can you wash the dishes, can you do this, can you help me, like no one will cook food for you. It's really a matter of like the mother trying to do everything, which is I would have to admit it's very difficult to mother here. Like if I were to choose, I would say the experience there is kind of easier, which is why I would always choose that. But I but with the the modern, like I told you, like the breast pumps that we have right now, all this technology, and Lilu, I know Lilu is also having like the breast massage. Can you imagine like a massage your bra? Like it's like I wish I had that also with my first son, that, you know, even though I had access to a lactation lady, but if you're in the Western world, it's very important also to at least try everything. That's, I would say, to every breastfeeding mother. So even if I have friends who are struggling with breastfeeding, I would, of course, this is only if the mother really wants to breastfeed. The problem is sometimes it feels like pressure to other people, but I would always say that breastfeeding should be a personal decision. We cannot force any mom to breastfeed if she doesn't want to. It's always a personal choice. And we just really need to support mothers who really wanted to breastfeed their children in any way that we can.
Yeah, and from what you're telling us in your experience, I think that part of sort of what you felt when you gave birth in the Philippines is that you had more support, right? You were preparing with the food you were eating from your 36 week of pregnancy for, when the baby arrived to be able to breastfeed. And there were these people that they may not be, international board certified lactation consultants, but they are people who specialize in making the mother feel cared for and helping them with breast massage. And breast massage is one of the only proven ways to increase milk supply. And I guess that your experience in Brazil, though it sounds like it was very complicated for you, and it must have been emotionally jarring, right, to be in that situation where you weren't able to be with your baby right away. I had the same thing happen to me, and it's really horrible. Where your baby wasn't latching properly, and you sort of expected yourself to be able to do all these things, and you really weren't, but that you couldn't find the support that you were used to. So I think that, much like what we do at Lilu, is trying to sort of bridge that tradition with the demands of women of today, right? Because, times do change, and the expectations that society puts on us, but also what we expect from ourselves change, right? And we want to breastfeed, we want to do what's best for our kids, but we also need to do what's best for ourselves.
Yes, for
It's just
sure.
a balancing act. And the more support you have in doing that, the better off you will be at every step of your journey. So I think that the most important thing, in celebrating something like Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Breastfeeding Week is sort of, understanding that there are different traditions around the world that we can really learn from, right? A lot of galactagogues, I know, we know from doing our research here at Lilu that it's they may work, they may not work. There's just not enough scientific research done around them to be able to say, like, yes, this works for sure. Um, so that's really tough, right? And it's tough on a mother to, go out there and look for information and look for the support and have them say, like, it may work, may not work, because we've never tested it. And it's like, why is my situation not important enough that you've never looked into it, sort of thing. And I think that, what we've learned from your mother and the old, lactation ladies that live in the Philippines is that this knowledge does come down sort of from the generations and your traditions and whatever culture you're in. And the most important thing is, how can we support women in their journeys and not have them have to fly to the Philippines, halfway around the world to be able to get a breast massage. So I guess my next question to you is, what would you sort of rescue from your experiences, and what do you think are like the most important traditions that really helped you, and that in both of your journeys, I guess, from both of the cultures that you've kind of had a chance to mother in, to be a mother within, that is.
Yes, I think the very first one is definitely the support system that a mother has. That's super duper important. Although I have support, of course, in both, yeah, journeys, it's very different. The kind of support that I had, it's just very different. So for someone who also like had a very complicated second journey, it's very difficult to compare when it comes to like how much of a support I had. But because I had support in both, it's just really the breastfeeding journey that made it different. And of course, second, like I this is like, I have to repeat it again, like the golden hour. It's super duper important for any mother who really wanted to, achieve, to have like breastfeeding success. And when I started like studying about like breastfeeding education, and I saw that there's really scientific backing when it comes to putting the baby during the golden hour. So that's definitely one thing that I haven't done really in my second, baby, but I did in my first. So I would just want to emphasize that. And I think the third one is also, I'm in my experience as well, the way we look at like breastfeeding, you know, in Asia, of course, in the Philippines where I came from, it's very natural. I forgot to share, like in the Philippines we also have this tradition, like every year during, it's normally like August 7, like the first, the seventh day of the month, which is the breastfeeding, awareness month. We have like an event there, like all breastfeeding mothers will just go to a coliseum and will just breastfeed all together. And it's
Oh,
like one of the most beautiful things that you would ever see when it comes to, like, in any breastfeeding event. Like thousands of mothers from different places, they would travel there just to show support each other, that we are here, we are celebrating like breasts for babies. Because like for us, I think, even though, there, it's, we cannot like remove the sexual, connotation when it comes to breast, but we celebrate breast for feeding our babies, for nurturing a baby. So, but um from what I've seen, I and experienced, like normal in the Western world, it's somehow seen taboo in most of the situations. So I think it's really, the comfort of the mother. Because can you imagine, like if it's something that's natural and you feel comfortable, like I'll just like put my baby in, if someone's in my house and I just put my baby in, I wouldn't even have to ask permission, because it's me like feeding my baby, it's me doing what I want to nourish my baby. So I would say definitely the, you know I would say like acceptance of breastfeeding, that we really need to like, push more in the Western world, that I would say. And of course, lastly, the the cultural traditions, as of course, even if I grew up with in a different like place, everything there, it's like, I would say, because it's Philippines is a third world country, so we don't have much of all the luxury. I also have like this experience, like when I was in the because when I was growing up in the Philippines, like we only have like one bedroom, so we don't have like, when I came here, it's like everyone has baby monitors, so we really didn't have like this luxury. So basically, we just rely on what we have and making use of the resources that you have around you. So, and when it comes to breastfeeding, I would say, like as a mother, you do what's what's good for you. You do you. So if you want if you want to like feed your baby at night, which is, I know it's a controversial topic in the, in the Western world, I would say like do what's comfortable to you. But of course, we need to follow whatever it's like. We need to think about safety all the time, especially when like sleeping with babies at night. But I think there's also some backing on that. Like babies who are, always with their mother are are more, mothers who are actually being able to like feed their babies like on a demand, on demand, have more success when it comes to like breastfeeding.
yeah. It's very true. It happened to me with my daughter. She was in the NICU, so she was in a very strict, she only eats every 3 hour schedule, and that put me on a schedule, and it was a lot harder to breastfeed her than it was to breastfeed my son, who, he was basically breastfeeding on demand for the first 2 years of his life, which seemed like forever, but now I realize that it's kind of what the World Health Organization and even the American Academy of Pediatrics are recommending, which makes it all the more important, right? To go back to, what are your traditions in whatever culture you grew up in, or if you're like Asian American, or wherever you come and you're living maybe in a country, in a culture different to what your parents are, to sort of bridge them and be able to sort of make them coexist and get the best out of both of them. Because the great thing, right, about the Western world is we have, as you mentioned, is we have all these great luxuries, right?
Resources.
And like the leading massage bar, right? It's a technological bra that massages your breasts, so it kind of meets both things. And we also have, bottle warmers, and we can freeze our breast milk so that our babies can have it when we're not around. We have pumps, we have all of these things that are meant to make our lives easier. And it's like, how do we, make them coexist happily? So basically, I have one more and last question for you, Leanne, and it's, what made you start Milksta, and what makes it special for us moms, to just, be aware of it and hopefully, understand more about Moringa.
Yes, I think of course my superstar Moringa. I always have to come back to that. So, but personally, the reason why I started Milksta is because I really just wanted to share my experience with Moringa and how it helped with my lactation journey, my breastfeeding journey personally, and actually not really just really on the boosting the milk. It's more of someone who's I'm a coffee addict. I have to admit, I drink like six. I can drink 6 cups of coffee in a day, and I've tried. I'm that my doctor is always telling me like you need to limit your caffeine, which is why we made Moringa decaf, so mothers can drink it anytime of the day if they want to do it to drink it while pumping in midnight. It won't affect like their body clock. So of course Moringa, the decaf, to be honest, I have to admit that I made a product for myself for myself because um I need the moringa, which personally have helped me with my breastfeeding, with with lactation. And I of course, like you mentioned, Maria, that all of this like herbs, all of this sometimes there's not much research about it, right? But there's actually one right now that there's an ongoing clinical trial on moringa leaf, or moringa leaves, which we have in Milksta, which is being done in Thailand. And I'm so
Right.
excited to see the results of that. But there there are a few like studies that have been done also with moringa when it comes to prolactin boost, prolactin boost. So that's the special ingredient that we have in all of the milk blends. And other than that, as a mother, I have to say, like, it just feels so good to be able to help a fellow mother, in any way that we can. The only I always tell people that what keeps you get out of the bed, in the morning and just work on your company. For me, to be honest, it's not. I would say, like, money, getting rich is secondary. What really makes me wake up, with a smile on my face every day is like if there's a mother who would send me a message like, I could have stopped breastfeeding if I didn't find your product. Like all these things, like thank you for, all the love letters that we receive from the mother. That's the really motivation that we have. And when I started Milksta, I also said, like, if I could only help like 10 mothers with Milksta, I would keep doing it. But through time, like, from 10 became 100 to thousands. And it's just, I can't just stop it, because every mother who, even actually every breastfeeding mother, even if they don't drink Milksta, even if they don't buy our products, I'm so happy for them, and I celebrate what they're doing for their babies and for themselves.
Well, that's beautiful. Thank you so much for your time, Leanne, and for joining me tonight on this live. And we definitely, our companies are very much alike. We wake up every morning hoping that we will help at least one more mom in her breastfeeding journey, and hopefully help her reach her own goal, whatever that goal may be, and just put her best foot forward in order to do what's best for her child and herself ultimately. So thank you, and hopefully, yeah, we get to chat more about how to bridge all of these traditions with our modern day lives.
Thank you, Maria. Yes.
Yeah,
Thank you.
so thank you.
Bye.
Bye.